My roommate asked, "Did you hear the doorbell at 3:15 a.m. last night? Did you hear the doorbell at 3:15 a.m. last night?" Emma's voice drifted from the kitchen as I stumbled toward the coffee maker, my brain still foggy from another restless night. I froze mid-step, her words hitting me like ice water. "What doorbell?" I asked, turning to face my roommate who was casually spreading peanut butter on toast like she'd just asked about the weather. "You know, the doorbell." It woke me up. Emma didn't even look at me, just kept methodically working her knife across the bread. "I figured it was probably one of your friends again. You really should tell them not to come by so late." My mouth went dry. Our apartment was on the second floor of a converted Victorian house near campus. There was no doorbell. There had never been a doorbell. People had to call from the street or text when they arrived. "Emma," I said slowly, gripping the counter. "We don't have a doorbell." She finally looked up, her expression perfectly innocent with just a hint of concern creasing her forehead. "Of course we do, Sarah. It's right by the front door downstairs. You walk past it every day. That's Mrs. Chen's apartment. We live upstairs. People knock on our door or—" "Are you feeling okay?" Emma interrupted, setting down her knife and studying me with those wide brown eyes that had fooled me for months. "You've seemed really stressed lately. Maybe you should talk to someone at the counseling center." There it was again. That gentle suggestion delivered with fake concern that made my skin crawl. The same tone she'd used 2 weeks ago when she asked why I'd left dirty dishes in the sink, dishes I'd never used because I'd been at the library until closing. The same voice when she wondered aloud why I'd had friends over laughing and playing music last Tuesday night when I'd actually been 3 miles away studying for my organic chemistry midterm until 2 a.m. "I'm not stressed," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "I'm telling you we don't have a doorbell. Check for yourself." Emma shrugged and took a bite of her toast. "I don't need to check. I heard it ring at exactly 3:15. I remember because I looked at my phone." She pulled out her iPhone and scrolled through something. "See? I even wrote it down in my notes app. Doorbell rang 3:15 a.m., Sarah's visitor." She turned the screen toward me, and sure enough, there was a note timestamped at 3:17 a.m. with exactly those words. My hand started shaking. This was different from the other incidents. Those had been subtle, things that could have been misunderstandings or memory lapses. But this was impossible. You couldn't mishear a doorbell that didn't exist. "I wasn't even here at 3:15, I whispered. "I got back from Jake's around midnight and went straight to bed." "Jake's?" Emma tilted her head. "But Sarah, you were definitely here. I heard you moving around in your room before the doorbell rang." The room started spinning slightly. I gripped the counter harder, my knuckles going white. For months, I'd been questioning myself, wondering if I really was as forgetful and careless as Emma suggested. I'd started keeping detailed notes about my schedule, taking photos of the kitchen before I left, anything to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. But this? This was proof that I wasn't the problem. Emma was lying. And she was doing it on purpose. The realization hit me like a physical blow, but I forced myself to stay calm. Emma was still watching me with that concerned expression, waiting for me to crumble or doubt myself again. Instead, I pulled out my own phone. "That's weird," I said, scrolling through my camera roll. "Because I took this photo at Jake's at 2:47 a.m. when we finished our statistics project." I showed her the screen, a selfie of Jake and me surrounded by spreadsheets and empty energy drink cans, the timestamp clearly visible. Jake's dorm room was unmistakable in the background, with his Manchester United posters and the distinctive blue cinderblock walls. Emma barely glanced at it. "Photos can be from any time, Sarah. You could have taken that earlier. The timestamp says 2:47 a.m. Those can be wrong." She took another bite of toast, completely unbothered. "Technology glitches all the time. I'm just concerned about you." The doorbell definitely rang. I stared at her, watching how easily the lies rolled off her tongue. How had I never noticed this before? The way she never backed down, never admitted she could be wrong, never showed even a flicker of uncertainty. "You know what? You're right," I said suddenly. "I should check with the counseling center. Memory problems can be serious." Something shifted in Emma's expression. Just for a split second, I caught a flash of satisfaction before the concerned mask slipped back into place. "I think that's really smart, Sarah. Dr. Martinez in Student Health Services is supposed to be excellent. I could even go with you if you want." "That's so thoughtful of you." I kept my voice light, friendly even. "I'll definitely look into it." But I wasn't going to Student Health Services. I was going to prove that Emma was systematically trying to make me question my sanity. The question was why. After Emma left for her 10 a.m. sociology class, I spent 20 minutes examining every inch of the building's entrance. Just as I knew I would, I found exactly one doorbell, a brass button next to Mrs. Chen's first floor apartment with Chen written in neat block letters below it. Our upstairs apartment was accessed through a separate side door that had nothing but a peephole and deadbolt. I took photos from every angle, including wide shots showing the building number and street signs to establish location. Then I called Mrs. Chen. "Hello, Mrs. Chen? This is Sarah from upstairs. I hope I'm not bothering you, but did anyone ring your doorbell around 3:15 this morning?" 3:15? "Oh my, no. I'm a very light sleeper, arthritis, you know. Any noise wakes me up. But no doorbell last night. Is everything all right, dear?" "Everything's fine, thank you. Just checking on something." I hung up and immediately opened a new note in my phone. October 15th, Emma claimed doorbell rang at 3:15 a.m. No doorbell exists for our apartment. Mrs. Chen confirms no one rang hers. Have photo evidence plus Jake can confirm I was at his dorm. Looking at that note, I realized I should have been documenting this from the beginning. How many times had Emma made me question my memory? How many incidents had I dismissed as my own confusion? I thought back to 3 weeks ago when she'd insisted I'd left the bathroom faucet running all night, causing a water spot on the ceiling below. I'd apologized profusely, even offered to pay Mrs. Chen for repairs. But now I remembered, I'd been at my parents' house that entire weekend for my dad's birthday. I had photos from the restaurant, timestamps proving I wasn't even in town. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, "Forgot my notebook. Coming back in 10 minutes. Perfect. I had exactly 10 minutes to start building my case. I flew into action, my heart pounding as I raced to Emma's room. I'd never gone through her stuff before, it felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But after months of questioning my own sanity, I needed answers. Her desk was meticulously organized, textbooks arranged by height, pens sorted by color in a clear container. So different from my own chaotic workspace. I quickly opened her notebook, the one she'd supposedly forgotten. Page after page of normal class notes for her sociology and psychology courses. Nothing suspicious until I reached a section near the back labeled Behavioral Observations in Emma's precise handwriting. My blood ran cold as I read. October 1st showed visible confusion when I mentioned the music incident. Apologized 3 times. Confidence clearly shaken October 3rd took photos of clean kitchen before leaving. Paranoid behavior increasing as expected October 7th asked Mrs. Chen about noise complaints. She's starting to seek external validation. Good sign October 12th mentioned considering therapy to Jake, overheard phone call. Plan is working There were dozens of entries going back to August, right after I'd moved in. Each one documented my reactions to her lies like I was some kind of lab rat. At the bottom of the page, she'd written, psychological manipulation study, how long before subject completely doubts own perceptions. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the notebook. This wasn't just casual gaslighting, this was a deliberate, calculated experiment. Emma was using me as a test subject for some sick psychological study. I heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Panicking, I quickly snapped photos of the relevant pages with my phone, making sure to capture her handwriting clearly. I'd just closed the notebook when I heard Emma's key in the lock. Sarah, she called out. You here? I rushed back to the kitchen, grabbing my organic chemistry textbook and spreading it open on the counter. Yeah, just studying, I called back, hoping my voice sounded normal. Emma appeared in the doorway, scanning the apartment with those sharp eyes. Everything okay? You sound breathless. Just stressed about my exam Friday. Professor Kim's tests are brutal. I gestured at the textbook, filled with chemical structures I could barely focus on. She nodded, but I caught her glancing toward her bedroom door. Did you think more about calling student health services? Actually, yes. I made an appointment for Thursday afternoon. The lie came easily, I was learning from the master manipulator herself. That's great. Emma's face lit up with what looked like genuine excitement. I really think Dr. Martinez will help you work through these memory issues. Memory issues. Like they were some medical condition instead of the result of her systematic psychological abuse. Can I ask you something? I said, keeping my tone casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. For your psychology classes, do you ever study manipulation techniques? Like gaslighting? Emma's expression didn't change, but I caught the slightest pause before she answered. We covered it briefly in social psychology. Why? Just curious. I've been reading about it online since I started having these memory problems. Apparently it's more common than people think. Emma grabbed her notebook from her desk, and I held my breath, wondering if she'd notice anything out of place. Well, I should get back to class. Professor Williams takes attendance. After she left, I immediately uploaded the photos to 3 different cloud storage accounts and emailed copies to myself. Then I called Jake. Hey, can you do me a huge favor? I need you to write down everything you remember about last night, what time I got there, what time I left, what we talked about. And can you send me any other photos from our study session? Okay. Is everything alright? You sound weird. I'll explain later. But Jake, this is really important. Can you email it to me within the hour? Sure, but Sarah. Thanks. I owe you dinner. I hung up and stared at the photos on my phone. Emma's neat handwriting documenting my psychological breakdown like a science experiment. The casual way she'd written about my paranoid behavior and shaken confidence. She'd been playing a long game, slowly and methodically destroying my ability to trust myself. But now I had proof. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I spent the next 3 hours creating what I mentally dubbed the Emma Files, a comprehensive digital dossier of every incident I could remember, cross-referenced with photos, timestamps, and witness statements. Jake had come through with a detailed timeline of the previous night, complete with photos he'd taken of our statistics work that clearly showed me in his dorm until 2:52 a.m. But as I compiled the evidence, a new problem emerged. I had no idea what Emma's endgame was. The notebook entries read like research notes, but for what? A psychology project? Some twisted personal experiment? Or was this building towards something worse? My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. How's the new living situation working out? You seemed stressed when we talked last week. Last week. When I'd called her in tears, convinced I was developing early onset dementia because I couldn't remember leaving the iron plugged in that had supposedly almost caused a fire. Emma had been so concerned, so helpful, suggesting I see a doctor about my increasing forgetfulness. I scrolled back through my call log and found it, a 43-minute conversation with my parents where I'd essentially convinced them their daughter was having a mental breakdown. My stomach clenched as I remembered my mom's worried voice asking if I was sleeping enough, eating well, whether the academic pressure was too much. Emma hadn't just been gaslighting me. She'd manipulated me into gaslighting myself to my own family. I was about to text my mom back when I heard Emma's key in the lock again. Quickly closing my laptop, I pretended to be reading my chemistry notes. How's the studying going? Emma asked, setting down her coffee cup with that same innocent smile. Good. Just reviewing molecular structures. I gestured vaguely at the textbook. How was Professor Williams' class? Interesting, actually. We talked about research methodologies in behavioral psychology. She settled into the chair across from me, and I noticed she was watching my face carefully. She mentioned this fascinating study from the 1970s where researchers convinced subjects they had witnessed events that never happened. Just through repeated suggestion and false evidence. My blood went cold. Was she talking about her own research? Or was this another mind game? That sounds unethical, I managed to say. Oh, it was. That's why we have strict guidelines now for psychological research. IRB approval, informed consent, all that. Emma's tone was conversational, but there was something else underneath. Although I suppose some people might still find ways around the rules if they were creative enough. I stared at her, wondering if she was confessing or threatening me. What do you mean? Nothing specific. Just that people can be very inventive when they want to test a hypothesis. She stood up and stretched. Speaking of which, I should probably start on my independent study proposal. Professor Williams wants us to design our own behavioral research project. Independent study. Research project. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. What's your project about? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Memory and perception. How environmental factors can influence someone's ability to distinguish between real and false memories. Emma was watching me intently now. I'm particularly interested in how quickly a person can be made to doubt their own recollections when presented with contradictory evidence. She knew. She knew that I knew, and she was telling me anyway. This wasn't just some sadistic game, this was her actual coursework. I was her unwilling test subject for an independent study project. That sounds fascinating, I said, matching her casual tone while my mind raced. How would someone even design a study like that ethically? Emma's smile widened. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Hypothetically, you'd need a subject who wouldn't realize they were being studied. Someone trusting. Maybe a roommate situation where you could control multiple variables over an extended period. I felt like I was going to be sick. And what would the researcher be trying to prove? Whether false memory implantation could be achieved in a naturalistic setting without clinical intervention. Whether ordinary social manipulation could produce the same results as formal psychological conditioning. She paused, tilting her head. Of course, it would be completely unethical to actually do something like that. But you did, I wanted to scream. You did it to me. Instead, I nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, definitely unethical. The subject would have to give informed consent. Exactly. Although. Emma trailed off, then shook her head. Never mind. I'm probably overthinking it. Professor Williams always says the best research ideas are the ones we can't actually pursue. She headed toward her room, then turned back. Oh, I almost forgot. Mrs. Chen stopped by while you were out earlier. She wanted to apologize for her doorbell malfunctioning last night. Apparently it's been going off randomly due to some electrical issue. She's getting it fixed today. My mouth fell open. What? I know, right? I felt so bad for doubting you earlier. You must have heard it too, even from upstairs. Sorry for suggesting you were confused. Emma's expression was perfectly sympathetic. It just goes to show how easily we can misinterpret things when we don't have all the information. She disappeared into her room, leaving me staring after her in stunned silence. Mrs. Chen had told me no one rang her bell last night. I was certain of it. But now Emma was claiming Mrs. Chen had admitted to a malfunction? Had I misunderstood my conversation with Mrs. Chen? Was my memory of that phone call wrong too? No. I pulled out my phone and checked my call log. There it was, Mrs. Chen, 11:23 a.m. 3 minutes 47 seconds. And I had taken notes immediately afterward. Emma was lying about Mrs. Chen's visit, just like she'd lied about everything else. But she was doing it so smoothly, so confidently, that for a split second I'd actually doubted myself again. That's when I realized the terrifying truth. Even knowing what Emma was doing, even having proof of her manipulation, part of me was still vulnerable to her gaslighting. She was that good at it. And if I didn't stop her soon, I might not be able to trust my own judgment enough to fight back. I waited exactly 17 minutes after Emma closed her door before I called Mrs. Chen back. My hands were trembling as I dialed, desperate to confirm what I already knew but terrified of what I might hear. Mrs. Chen? It's Sarah again from upstairs. I'm so sorry to bother you twice in one day, but I wanted to thank you for stopping by earlier to talk to my roommate about your doorbell. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, dear, but I haven't left my apartment today. My arthritis is acting up something fierce. I can barely make it to the mailbox. Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost cried. So you didn't speak to Emma about a doorbell malfunction? A malfunction? Oh my, no. That old bell has worked perfectly for 15 years. Never had a single problem with it. Mrs. Chen's voice grew concerned. Sarah, is everything all right up there? You sound upset. Everything's fine, Mrs. Chen. Thank you so much. I hung up and immediately added another entry to my documentation. 3:47 p.m. Emma claimed Mrs. Chen visited to apologize for doorbell malfunction. Called Mrs. Chen, she never left apps today, doorbell works perfectly. Emma fabricated an entire story within hours of me confronting her. But as I typed, something Emma had said earlier kept nagging at me. Her research project wasn't just some casual psychological torture, she needed data. Real, documented results for her independent study. Which meant. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the university's student portal, navigating to the psychology department's website. It took me 20 minutes of digging through faculty pages and course listings before I found what I was looking for, Professor Williams' Advanced Behavioral Psychology class, spring semester. Independent study projects were worth 40% of the final grade and required IRB approval for any human subject's research. My stomach dropped. Emma needed institutional approval for her study, which meant she'd had to submit a formal proposal. And if she was using me as an unwilling subject, she'd either lied to the ethics board or found some loophole that made it technically legal. I was still staring at the screen when my phone rang. Jake's name flashed across the display. Hey, did you get my email about last night? He asked without preamble. Yeah, thanks. It was exactly what I needed. Good, because I've been thinking about your memory thing, and something doesn't add up. Jake's voice carried that analytical tone he used when he was working through a complex problem. You asked me to document our entire evening, right? Well, I went through my photos, and there's something weird. My pulse quickened. What kind of weird? Remember when you went to the bathroom around 1:30? While you were gone, your phone was buzzing like crazy. I almost answered it because I thought it might be an emergency, but then you came back. Okay. I tried to remember, but that detail hadn't seemed important at the time. So I checked the timestamp on this photo I took of our statistics notes. It was 1:34 a.m., and your phone is right there on the table, still lit up from notifications. But here's the thing, Sarah. If someone was trying to establish that you were home at a specific time, wouldn't they need to know you weren't answering your phone? The implications hit me like a physical blow. You think someone was calling to see if I was home? I think someone was calling your apartment repeatedly, and when you didn't answer, they knew you were out. Which would make it pretty safe too. I don't know, move around your room or do whatever would create the sounds your roommate claims to have heard. Jesus. Emma hadn't just lied about hearing me come home, she'd actively verified I was gone before staging evidence of my presence. The level of premeditation was staggering. Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Emma ever talked to you about me? Asked questions about my behavior or mental state? Another pause, longer this time. Actually, yeah. About 2 weeks ago she ran into me at the campus center and mentioned she was worried about you. Said you'd been really forgetful and anxious, maybe struggling with the academic pressure. What exactly did she say? That you'd been leaving messes and forgetting about them, having trouble keeping track of your schedule. She asked if I'd noticed you seeming confused or scattered during our study sessions. His voice grew uncomfortable. Sarah, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but it felt like she was fishing for information. Like she wanted me to confirm that you were having problems. My hands clenched into fists. Emma had been building a narrative about my mental decline, gathering witness statements from my own friends to support her gaslighting campaign. What did you tell her? Nothing, because honestly, you seem fine to me. Stressed about classes like everyone else, but not forgetful or confused. If anything, you're more organized than most people I know. Jake hesitated. Why are you asking? Is Emma the reason you needed all that documentation about last night? I closed my eyes, weighing how much to tell him. Jake was in my advanced statistics class. He understood research methodology and data manipulation better than most people. If anyone could help me figure out Emma's endgame, it would be him. Jake, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but I need you to hear me out. Over the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything, the months of gaslighting, the notebook entries, Emma's research project, the systematic way she'd been documenting my psychological deterioration. Jake listened without interruption until I finished. Holy shit, Sarah. That's not just unethical. If she's collecting data on you without consent for an actual academic project, it's academic fraud. The university would expel her. But how do I prove it? It's her word against mine, and she's already established a narrative that I'm having memory problems. Who's going to believe me? The evidence you've collected helps, but you're right, you need more. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. What if we turned the tables? If Emma is running an actual study, she needs quantifiable results. Data showing the progression of your supposed memory issues, documentation of your increasing self-doubt. What if we gave her data that was too good to be true? I don't follow. What if you started acting like her gaslighting was working better than it actually is? Really sell the confused, paranoid behavior she's trying to create. If she's as methodical as you say, she'll document everything. And if you can make her think she's getting breakthrough results, she might get careless, I finished, understanding. Document things she shouldn't, maybe even record our interactions for her research. Exactly. Give her enough rope to hang herself academically. But Sarah. Jake's voice grew serious. This is dangerous. Playing into psychological manipulation, even strategically, could actually mess with your head. Are you sure you can handle pretending to lose your grip on reality without actually losing it? I thought about Emma's satisfied expression when she suggested therapy, the clinical way she'd written about my shaken confidence in her notebook. She'd spent months systematically destroying my sense of self for a grade. I'm sure, I said. It's time Emma learned what it feels like to be manipulated. The next morning, I started my performance. Emma? I called out hesitantly as she prepared her usual coffee and toast routine. I think something might be wrong with me. She turned, eyebrows raised with what looked like genuine concern. What do you mean? I twisted my hands together, channeling every anxious moment she'd caused over the past months. I called Mrs. Chen yesterday about the doorbell, and I could have sworn she told me one thing, but then when you said she came by, I started doubting myself. What if I misheard her? What if my memory really is getting worse? Emma set down her mug and gave me her full attention. I caught the micro-expression that flickered across her face, satisfaction quickly masked by sympathy. Oh, Sarah. I'm so glad you're finally acknowledging this. It takes courage to admit when something isn't right. She moved closer, placing a hand on my arm. Memory issues can be really scary, but recognizing them is the first step. But what if it gets worse? I let my voice crack slightly. What if I can't trust anything I remember? Hey, that's why you're seeing Dr. Martinez tomorrow, right? These things are treatable. Emma's tone was soothing, but I noticed she pulled out her phone. Actually, do you mind if I take some notes? I've been tracking your episodes to help identify patterns. Maybe it would be useful for your doctor. Episodes. Like I was having seizures instead of responding to her systematic psychological abuse. You've been keeping track? I asked, injecting gratitude into my voice while my stomach churned. Of course. That's what friends do. She opened what looked like a notes app. When did you first notice feeling confused about the Mrs. Chen conversation? Right after you told me she'd visited. Everything just felt mixed up. I watched her fingers move across the screen, documenting my manufactured breakdown in real time. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a fog, you know? Like reality isn't quite solid anymore. Emma's typing paused. That's a really insightful way to describe it. Very articulate. Something in her tone made me look up. She was studying me with an expression I'd never seen before, clinical interest. How often would you say you experience this fog feeling? The question was too specific, too probing. Jake was right, she was collecting data. I don't know, maybe a few times a week? It's hard to keep track when your memory isn't reliable. I forced a shaky laugh. God, listen to me. I sound completely paranoid. You're not paranoid, Sarah. You're self-aware. Emma finished typing and looked up with a warm smile. Actually, I had an idea that might help. What if I started recording some of our conversations? That way if you ever doubt what was said, we'd have an objective record. My pulse spiked. She wanted to record me having fake breakdowns for her research project. Would that be okay with you? I asked carefully. I mean, I'd feel terrible knowing you're constantly documenting how messed up I am. Sarah, no. This isn't about you being messed up. This is about creating tools to help you feel more confident in your perceptions. Emma's voice carried that practiced concern I'd fallen for so many times. Besides, if it helps Professor Williams understand how memory issues progress in naturalistic settings, it could benefit other students too. There it was, the slip I'd been waiting for. Emma had just connected her help with Professor Williams' class. She wasn't even trying to hide that this was research anymore. Professor Williams? I tilted my head, playing confused. Emma's face went blank for just a moment. I meant Dr. Martinez. Sorry, I've got Professor Williams on my mind because of my psychology project. She laughed, but it sounded forced. See? Even I mix things up sometimes. What's your psychology project about? Nothing interesting. Just behavioral observations. Emma closed her phone abruptly. Listen, I should get to class, but think about the recording idea, okay? I really think it could help. After she left, I immediately called Jake. She took the bait, I said without preamble. She wants to start recording our conversations and she accidentally mentioned Professor Williams. She's getting sloppy. Perfect. How convincing was your performance? Too convincing. I stared at my reflection in the kitchen window, remembering how easily the words had come. Jake, what if I'm actually starting to lose track of what's real? What if pretending to be confused makes me actually confused? That's not going to happen. You know what's real, you have documentation, timestamps, witnesses. Emma is the one living in a fantasy world where psychological torture counts as legitimate research. But even as Jake spoke, I felt a familiar flutter of uncertainty. Had Mrs. Chen really said her doorbell worked perfectly, or was I remembering our conversation wrong? Had Emma actually mentioned Professor Williams, or was I so desperate to catch her in lies that I was creating them myself? I shook my head violently. This was exactly what Emma wanted, for me to doubt my own perceptions even when I had proof. I pulled up the photos of her notebook on my phone, focusing on her handwriting. Asterisk plan is working. Asterisk. The plan was working, but not the way Emma thought. Tonight, when she tried to record my next episode, I'd give her something worth documenting. That evening, I prepared for what I hoped would be Emma's downfall. I'd spent the afternoon researching academic integrity policies and found exactly what I needed. Any student caught using deception in research involving human subjects faced immediate expulsion. Emma's entire future hinged on keeping her psychological torture disguised as legitimate study. But I needed her to incriminate herself beyond doubt. At 8:30 p.m., right when Emma usually started her evening study routine, I burst out of my room in fake distress. Emma, thank God you're here, I said, letting my voice shake. Something really weird just happened and I don't know if I can trust what I experienced. She looked up from her sociology textbook, and I caught that flash of interest again. What's wrong? My mom just called, and she said I had a conversation with her this morning about dropping out of school. But Emma, I swear I never called her today. I've been in classes since 9 a.m. I ran my hands through my hair. She even knew specific things about my organic chemistry grade and my fight with my lab partner last week. How could she know that if I didn't tell her? Emma's eyes lit up, actually lit up, like I'd just handed her a Christmas present. Sarah, sit down. You're shaking. What if I did call her and just completely forgot? What if I'm losing hours of time now? I sank into the chair across from her, noting how quickly she reached for her phone. This is so much worse than forgetting about dishes or doorbells. This is like blackouts. Okay, first things first, let's check your call log, Emma said, pulling out her own phone. And I'm going to record this so you have a clear record of what we discussed, alright? Sometimes when we're anxious, we forget important details. I nodded gratefully while my heart hammered. She was actually going to record herself manipulating me during a fake psychological crisis. Now, what exactly did your mom say? Emma asked, hitting the record button. She said I called her at 11:15 this morning, crying about how overwhelmed I felt. That I told her Professor Kim gave me a D on my midterm and I was thinking about switching majors. I looked directly into Emma's phone camera. But I got a B+ on that exam, and I never called her. Emma, what if I'm having some kind of breakdown and not remembering it? Let me see your phone, Emma said gently. I handed it over, watching her scroll through my call log. Of course, there was no call to my mom this morning, because I'd never made one. My mom was at a medical conference in Denver and I hadn't spoken to her in 3 days. Emma said, frowning at the screen. I don't see a call to your mom today. But she said we talked for 23 minutes. She even mentioned the time specifically. I grabbed the phone back, pretending to search frantically. Maybe I used a different phone? Or called from school? Sarah, Emma said carefully, still recording, is it possible your mom is confused? Maybe she had a dream about you calling, or mixed up a conversation with your sister? I stared at her, letting my face crumble. My sister's been studying abroad in Prague for 3 months. My mom wouldn't mix that up. I put my head in my hands. Oh God, what if I really am losing my mind? You're not losing your mind, Emma said, but I caught the excitement she was trying to hide. But this does sound like a significant memory episode. Much more complex than the other incidents. Other incidents. She was categorizing my fake breakdowns like symptoms in a case study. What if it gets worse? I whispered. What if I start forgetting entire days? That's not going to happen. Emma leaned forward, her voice taking on that clinical tone. Tell me, how are you feeling right now? Confused, anxious, disconnected from reality? The questions were too specific, too leading. She was feeding me symptoms to confirm her research hypothesis. All of those things, I said. It's like I can't trust anything I think I know. Even talking to you right now, part of me wonders if this conversation is really happening or if I'm just imagining it. Emma's fingers moved across her phone screen, taking notes while recording. That's a really important observation, Sarah. This sense of dissociation, of questioning the reality of current experiences, represents a significant escalation. Escalation. She was talking about my mental state like it was a disease progression she was monitoring. Should I call my mom back? I asked. Try to figure out what actually happened? Actually, I don't think that's a good idea right now. If there was some kind of confusion, talking to her while you're in this heightened emotional state might make things worse. Emma's tone was professionally soothing. Why don't you try to get some rest? Sometimes these episodes resolve better with sleep. Episodes. There was that word again. But what if I wake up tomorrow and don't remember this conversation? What if I forget that I'm having memory problems and start thinking I'm fine again? I looked at her with desperate eyes. I need you to promise me something, Emma. If I ever act like nothing's wrong, if I ever claim these incidents didn't happen, don't let me convince you. Promise you'll remind me how serious this is getting. Of course, Emma said softly. That's what friends are for. She stopped recording and immediately opened what looked like another app, probably her research notes. Actually, she said, typing rapidly, I think I should email Professor Williams about this. She mentioned that severe memory disturbances in college students sometimes require academic accommodations. Maybe she could connect you with additional resources. Another slip. Emma was so excited about her breakthrough data that she was openly connecting my condition to her coursework. You'd really do that for me? I asked. Sarah, your mental health is more important than anything else. If my psychology professor can help, of course I'm going to reach out. She finished typing and looked up. Try to get some sleep, okay? Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. I nodded and shuffled toward my room, playing the part of a confused, grateful victim one more time. But inside, I was triumphant. Emma had just recorded herself manipulating someone she believed was having a psychological crisis. She'd documented her intention to report my episodes to her professor as research data. And she'd done it all while thinking she was finally getting the breakthrough results her study needed. I had her. The next morning, I woke up to find Emma gone and a handwritten note on the kitchen counter. Sarah called in sick to work so I could research memory disorders at the library. Back this afternoon with resources to help. My stomach dropped. Emma was escalating faster than I'd anticipated. I immediately checked my phone and found 3 missed calls from my mom, all timestamped at 6:47 a.m. My hands trembled as I called her back. Sarah? Honey, I got the strangest call this morning from your roommate. She said you've been having serious memory problems and mentioned some concerning incidents? Mom's voice carried that particular blend of worry and confusion that made my chest tight. She asked if I'd noticed you seeming disoriented during our conversations. What exactly did Emma tell you? I asked, sinking into the kitchen chair where she'd recorded my fake breakdown just 12 hours earlier. She said you'd been forgetting entire conversations, leaving appliances on, having episodes where you question reality. Sarah, why didn't you tell me you were struggling? Emma mentioned you might need to take medical leave from school. Medical leave. Emma was trying to get me removed from the university entirely. Mom, I need you to listen very carefully. Emma is lying. I'm not having memory problems, she's been gaslighting me for months as part of a psychology project. I have documentation proving. Sweetheart, slow down. You sound very agitated. Mom's tone shifted into that careful cadence people use with unstable relatives. Emma seemed genuinely concerned about you. She even offered to drive you home for a few weeks so you could rest and see our family doctor. The manipulation was perfect. Emma had positioned herself as the caring friend trying to help, while making me sound paranoid and delusional. If I insisted she was lying, I'd only confirm the narrative she'd already established. Did Emma mention her psychology class? I asked desperately. She did say she'd learned about memory disorders in school, which is how she recognized your symptoms. Sarah, she's trying to help you. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar vertigo that came with Emma's mind games. Even knowing what she was doing, having proof of her lies, she'd still managed to manipulate my own mother into doubting my mental state. I have to go, Mom. I'll call you later when I can think more clearly. Maybe Emma's right about you coming home for a while. I hung up and immediately opened my laptop, pulling up the photos of Emma's notebook. The evidence was still there, her handwriting documenting my reactions like a lab experiment. But for the first time since discovering her manipulation, I wondered if anyone would believe me. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, emergency. Meet me at Morrison Library, 3rd floor study rooms. Now. 20 minutes later, I found Jake pacing in study room 314, his laptop open to what looked like the university's academic database. Tell me you didn't actually have a breakdown last night, he said without preamble. It was fake, just like we planned. Why? Because Emma submitted a research proposal to the IRB yesterday evening. I have a friend who works in the psychology department office, and she owed me a favor. Jake turned his laptop toward me. Sarah, look at this. On the screen was Emma's official independent study application, dated 11:43 p.m. the previous night, just 3 hours after she'd recorded my fake episode. The title made my blood freeze, Induced False Memory Syndrome in Naturalistic Settings, a case study in environmental manipulation and psychological deterioration. She submitted this right after recording you, Jake continued. But here's the scary part, she's claiming you gave informed consent to participate. Look at section 4. I read Emma's typed explanation with growing horror. Subject S voluntarily agreed to participate in behavioral documentation after experiencing concerning memory lapses. Subject explicitly requested that researcher maintain detailed records of episodes to aid in medical diagnosis. Audio recordings obtained with subject's full knowledge and consent for therapeutic purposes. She's claiming my request to record our conversations was consent to be her research subject, I whispered. It gets worse. She's proposing to present this at the regional psychology conference in December. Your psychological breakdown is going to be her ticket to graduate school. I stared at the proposal, seeing my months of suffering reduced to academic jargon and methodology. Emma had turned my manipulation into a career opportunity. Jake, what if I can't prove she lied? What if the IRB approves this and suddenly I'm officially documented as having false memory syndrome? Then we make sure her research has some serious flaws, Jake said grimly. Sarah, it's time to stop playing defense. If Emma wants to study psychological manipulation, let's give her a masterclass. I spent the rest of that day crafting what Jake and I dubbed Operation Gaslight, a systematic plan to expose Emma's research fraud while documenting her willingness to exploit someone she believed was mentally unstable. The first phase required me to become the perfect test subject. That evening, I waited until Emma returned from her library research with a stack of printouts about dissociative disorders and early-onset dementia. She'd clearly been building a case for my deteriorating mental state. Sarah, I found some really helpful information, she announced, spreading medical articles across our kitchen table like evidence exhibits. Dr. Martinez is going to want to see these patterns documented properly. I shuffled out of my room wearing the same clothes from yesterday, my hair deliberately unwashed. Emma, something happened while you were gone. Something really bad. Her eyes sharpened immediately. What kind of something? I tried to call my mom back after you talked to her this morning, but I let my voice trail off, staring at my hands. I couldn't remember her phone number. I've known that number my entire life, and it was just gone. Emma pulled out her phone so fast I almost broke character. That's significant, Sarah. Memory loss for overlearned information suggests she caught herself, switching back to concerned friend mode. I mean, that must have been terrifying for you. I had to look it up in my contacts, and even then, when I saw the numbers, they didn't feel familiar. I looked up at her with carefully crafted fear. What if I'm losing everything? What if next week I forget my own name? That's not going to happen, Emma said, but I could see her taking mental notes. Did you eventually reach your mom? I tried, but when she answered, I couldn't remember why I was calling her. I just sat there holding the phone until she hung up. I pulled out my call log, showing her a 3-second call to my mom's number at 2:17 p.m. Look, I hung up after 3 seconds because I literally forgot I was talking to my own mother. Emma's eyes lit up like she discovered gold. Sarah, this is exactly what I was reading about today. Progressive memory loss following acute stress episodes. She gestured to her medical printouts. There's actually a name for what you're experiencing, dissociative amnesia with fugue features. The fact that she had a diagnosis ready meant she'd been planning this escalation for weeks. Is it permanent? I whispered. The research is mixed, but early intervention is key. Emma was already typing on her phone. I think we need to document this episode immediately while the details are fresh. Can I record you describing exactly what happened when you called your mom? 20 minutes later, I'd given Emma 47 minutes of recorded content describing my fake memory blackouts, complete with timestamps and specific details about losing autobiographical information. She was so focused on capturing data that she forgot to maintain her caring roommate act. This represents a significant qualitative shift from your previous episodes, she said while reviewing her notes. The progression from procedural memory issues to episodic and semantic memory failure is textbook dissociative disorder. Textbook? I repeated. Emma's face went blank. I meant, it follows patterns I read about today. Very recognizable symptoms. But she'd slipped again, using clinical language that revealed how she really saw me not as a friend in crisis, but as a case study confirming her research hypothesis. Emma, can I ask you something? And please be honest because I'm scared and confused about everything right now. Of course. Do you think I'm crazy? She was quiet for a long moment, and I watched her choose her words carefully. I think you're experiencing something real and frightening that has a medical explanation. That's not crazy, Sarah. That's just complex. Complex. Like I was a puzzle she was solving rather than a person who was suffering. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, package delivered to your door. Phase 2 ready when you are. I should try to get some sleep, I said, standing up slowly like movement required effort. Actually, before you go, Emma said, I talked to Professor Williams today about academic accommodations for students with memory disorders. She suggested documenting a complete timeline of your episodes for any medical professionals you see. You talked to your professor about me? Just hypothetically. I didn't use your name or anything. Another lie, I was certain Emma had told Professor Williams exactly who her research subject was. She also mentioned that the psychology department has funding for students to attend conferences where they present research about mental health advocacy. Mental health advocacy. Emma was planning to present my psychological breakdown at an academic conference as research. That's nice of her, I managed. After Emma went to bed, I crept outside and found Jake's package, a small digital voice recorder and a USB drive labeled for emergencies only. Inside my room, I plugged in the USB drive and found a folder containing Emma's complete academic records, which Jake had somehow accessed through his work-study job in the registrar's office. Her transcript showed straight A's in every psychology class, with a particular focus on experimental design and behavioral manipulation. But buried in her course history was something that made my blood run cold. She'd taken research methods in deception studies last semester and earned the only A+ in the class. Emma wasn't just improvising her psychological torture, she'd been formally trained in manipulation techniques and was applying them with academic precision. I was about to close the laptop when I noticed one final detail that changed everything. Emma's enrollment status showed she was on academic probation. Her GPA had dropped to 2.4 last semester after failing 2 major classes unrelated to psychology. Emma wasn't just using me for research, she was using me to save her entire college career. The success of her independent study project was the only thing standing between her and academic dismissal. Which meant she'd do anything to ensure her research showed the results she needed. Tomorrow, I'd find out exactly how far she was willing to go. The next morning, I found Emma in the kitchen with her laptop open, typing furiously while surrounded by psychology textbooks. She looked up when I emerged from my room, and I caught something predatory in her expression before she rearranged her features into concern. Sarah, perfect timing. I've been working on something that might help. She gestured to her screen, which displayed what looked like a formal document. I stayed up until 3 a.m. creating a comprehensive timeline of your episodes for Dr. Martinez. I moved closer, pretending to be grateful while reading over her shoulder. What I saw made my stomach drop. Emma had created a detailed medical history spanning 6 months, documenting symptoms that had never occurred. According to her timeline, I'd been showing signs of memory disturbance since August, weeks before we'd even met. She'd fabricated conversations with my parents, invented incidents where I'd supposedly gotten lost walking to class, and described episodes of me talking to people who weren't there. This is so thorough, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. When did I tell you about getting lost near the chemistry building? September 12th. You came home really upset, remember? You said you'd been walking the same route to Professor Kim's lab for weeks, but suddenly couldn't find the building. Emma's tone was patient, like she was explaining something to a confused child. You were crying because you thought you might be having a stroke. None of that had ever happened. On September 12th, I'd been at my cousin's wedding 3 hours away. I had dozens of photos to prove it. I don't remember telling you that, I said carefully. That's exactly the problem, Sarah. You're starting to forget the conversations where you describe your memory problems. Emma highlighted a section of her timeline. See this pattern? You report an episode, we discuss it, then later you don't remember our conversation about it. It's recursive amnesia, forgetting that you forgot. The clinical precision of her lie was breathtaking. She'd created a psychological catch-22 where any denial of her fabricated symptoms became evidence of deeper memory loss. Dr. Martinez is going to want to see this level of documentation, Emma continued. Actually, Professor Williams mentioned that detailed case studies like this sometimes get published in undergraduate psychology journals. Your experience could help other students recognize early warning signs. There it was, Emma's endgame. She wasn't just planning to present my fake breakdown at conferences. She wanted to publish it, cementing her academic reputation while destroying mine permanently. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, counseling center appointment, 2:30 p.m. An appointment I'd never made. Emma, did you schedule something for me today? Oh good, you saw the reminder. Dr. Martinez had a cancellation, so I grabbed it for you. Emma smiled brightly. I also took the liberty of calling ahead to give them some background information so you wouldn't have to repeat everything. They're expecting us at 2:30. Us? I'm going to drive you and wait outside, just in case you have any confusion afterward. Memory episodes can be triggered by stressful conversations. She closed her laptop with a satisfied snap. Plus, Dr. Martinez asked if I could provide collateral information about what I've observed at home. The trap was closing. Emma had arranged for me to be professionally diagnosed with a mental illness she'd fabricated, and she positioned herself as the primary witness to my deteriorating condition. Once I had an official diagnosis in my medical records, her research would be unassailable. I excused myself to the bathroom and immediately texted Jake, emergency. Emma scheduled psych eval for 2:30 today. She's going to give them false info. Need backup plan now. His response came back in seconds, already on it. Whatever happens, do not let them admit you anywhere. Stall until 4 p.m. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, noting the dark circles under my eyes from stress and the pale complexion that came from weeks of psychological warfare. For the first time since discovering Emma's manipulation, I looked like someone who might actually need mental health intervention. What if Dr. Martinez believed Emma's timeline? What if the fabricated symptoms were convincing enough to warrant immediate treatment? What if I couldn't prove my sanity to a trained psychologist who'd already been primed to see pathology? I was about to find out whether the truth was stronger than Emma's perfectly constructed lies. At 2:15 p.m., I sat in Emma's passenger seat watching her check her reflection in the rearview mirror one final time. She dressed carefully for this appointment, professional blouse, minimal makeup, the picture of a concerned friend doing her civic duty. Remember, Sarah, Dr. Martinez just wants to help. Try to be as honest as possible about what you've been experiencing. Emma's voice carried that practiced concern I'd grown to hate. I know it's scary to admit when something's wrong, but denial will only make things worse. She was coaching me to confess to symptoms I'd never had, laying groundwork for the diagnosis that would validate her research. I nodded meekly while my phone buzzed with a text from Jake, trust me. 2 more hours. The counseling center lobby smelled like lavender and false comfort. Emma approached the reception desk with her folder of fabricated evidence while I signed in, noting how the intake form asked about collateral sources who could provide information about my condition. Sarah Mitchell for Dr. Martinez, the receptionist said with practiced kindness. And you're the roommate who called? Emma Chen. I've been documenting Sarah's episodes to help with the assessment. She handed over her timeline like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Some of the incidents have been quite concerning. Dr. Martinez will review this before the session. Sarah, she'll see you in about 10 minutes. I chose a seat by the window, watching Emma settle across from me with barely concealed anticipation. This was the moment her months of manipulation would pay off, an official diagnosis that would legitimize her research and secure her academic future. Miss Mitchell? A woman in her 50s appeared in the doorway, Dr. Martinez's nameplate visible on her blazer. I'm ready for you. I stood on shaking legs, but Dr. Martinez held up a hand. Actually, before we begin, I have a few questions about the background information provided. She looked directly at Emma. Ms. Chen, you mentioned observing concerning behavior since August, but Sarah's emergency contact forms show she only moved in with you in late September. Emma's confident expression flickered. Oh, we knew each other before becoming roommates. I helped her move in. I see. And these detailed conversations about memory episodes, you documented specific dates and times going back to early September. Your timeline shows a conversation on September 12th about disorientation, but according to Sarah's class schedule, she was approved for personal leave that entire week. My heart hammered as Dr. Martinez compared Emma's fabricated timeline with official university records. Someone had done their homework. There might be some confusion about the dates, Emma said, her voice losing its certainty. Memory episodes can be difficult to track precisely. Indeed they can. Dr. Martinez smiled politely. Ms. Chen, I'll need to speak with Sarah privately first, then perhaps we can discuss your observations afterward. In Dr. Martinez's office, I found myself face to face with someone who clearly wasn't buying Emma's story. The walls were covered with degrees from prestigious universities, and her desk held a stack of folders that suggested she'd seen every type of psychological manipulation imaginable. Sarah, I received an interesting phone call this morning from a Jake Morrison, who identified himself as your friend and study partner. He was quite concerned about potential academic misconduct involving you as an unwitting research subject. Dr. Martinez leaned back in her chair. Would you like to tell me what's really been happening with your roommate? The relief was so intense I almost cried. You know about Emma's research project? I know that someone submitted a very detailed IRB proposal last week claiming to have documented your psychological deterioration over several months. I also know that the dates in that proposal don't match your actual enrollment records, housing assignments, or academic timeline. She opened one of the folders on her desk. Jake provided some additional documentation that raises serious concerns about research ethics violations. Dr. Martinez turned her computer screen toward me, showing Emma's IRB application side by side with what looked like official university records. Every single date Emma had used as evidence of my declining mental state was contradicted by documented proof of my actual whereabouts. Sarah, I need to ask you directly, did you consent to participate in psychological research conducted by your roommate? No. She's been gaslighting me for months, making me think I was losing my memory and having psychological episodes. I only found out about her research project when I discovered her notebook documenting my reactions like I was a lab rat. And the recorded conversations she submitted as evidence of your consent? I asked her to record our conversations because I thought I was actually having memory problems. She manipulated me into requesting documentation of my own fake breakdown. The words poured out of me, months of psychological torture finally finding voice. Dr. Martinez, she convinced my own mother that I needed medical leave from school. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. Academic fraud involving human subjects manipulation is among the most serious violations we investigate. Sarah, I'm going to need your help to ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Through the office window, I could see Emma in the waiting room, checking her phone with growing agitation. She had no idea that her carefully constructed research project was about to become evidence of her own psychological misconduct. What happens now? I asked. Now we document everything properly. And Ms. Chen learns that psychological manipulation works both ways, especially when the subject finally fights back. 20 minutes later, I watched through Dr. Martinez's office window as two university officials entered the waiting room. Emma's face went from confusion to alarm as they approached her with official-looking documents. That's Dean Richardson and Ms. Foster from Academic Integrity, Dr. Martinez explained, following my gaze. They'll be conducting the formal investigation into research misconduct. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, where are you? They're asking me questions about my psych project and want to see my research materials. Another buzz, Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can you come out here and explain about your memory issues? Then, this is serious. They're talking about academic probation. I need you to confirm that you asked me to document your episodes. I showed the messages to Dr. Martinez, who shook her head with professional disgust. Even now, she's trying to manipulate you into supporting her fabricated narrative. Should I respond? Absolutely not. Let her academic record speak for itself. Dr. Martinez pulled up something on her computer. Jake provided some very interesting additional information about Ms. Chen's enrollment status. Did you know she's been on academic probation since last semester? I nodded. Jake found that in her transcripts. Her GPA dropped to 2.4 after failing 2 major classes. What you might not know is why she failed those classes. Professor Williams contacted me an hour ago with some disturbing details about Emma's previous research methods. Dr. Martinez's expression grew dark. Last semester, she attempted to conduct an unauthorized study on her study group members, trying to manipulate their anxiety levels before exams to measure performance impacts. My stomach dropped. She's done this before? The other students figured out what she was doing and reported her to the department. She barely avoided expulsion because there wasn't enough evidence of deliberate harm. Dr. Martinez closed the file. This time, however, thanks to your documentation and Jake's technical support, we have comprehensive proof of systematic psychological manipulation conducted over months. Through the window, I could see Emma frantically scrolling through her phone while Dean Richardson reviewed a thick folder of documents. Her carefully composed mask was finally slipping, revealing the calculating person underneath. Dr. Martinez, what happens to her research project now? The IRB will formally reject her application and flag her academic record to prevent future human subjects research. But more importantly, this investigation will likely result in her immediate dismissal from the university. She paused. Sarah, what she did to you constitutes psychological abuse under university policy. The administration takes these violations very seriously. My phone buzzed again with a call from Emma. I declined it, but seconds later she was calling again, then again. She's panicking, I observed. She should be. Academic fraud involving psychological manipulation of unwilling subjects is grounds for permanent expulsion and potential criminal charges if the psychological harm is deemed severe enough. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma had spent months documenting my supposed psychological deterioration, and now her own desperation was being documented by university officials as evidence of her misconduct. There's one more thing you should know, Dr. Martinez continued. Professor Williams revealed that Emma had been requesting extensions and extra credit opportunities due to her probationary status. This research project wasn't just about academic advancement, it was her last chance to avoid being kicked out of school. That explained the increasing desperation in Emma's manipulation tactics over the past few weeks. She hadn't just been collecting data for a psychology project, she'd been fighting for her academic survival using my sanity as ammunition. My phone rang again, Emma's third attempt in 5 minutes. Should I answer it? If you want to hear what someone sounds like when their entire future crumbles in real time. I stared at Emma's name on my screen, remembering months of calculated cruelty disguised as friendship. Part of me wanted to answer, to hear her try to manipulate me one final time now that the power dynamic had completely reversed. But mostly, I wanted to watch through this window as Emma finally experienced the confusion and helplessness she'd been systematically inflicting on me. The phone stopped ringing, and I smiled. I watched Emma's face crumble as Dean Richardson showed her something on his tablet. Even from Dr. Martinez's office, I could see her hands shaking as she read whatever document had just destroyed her carefully constructed lies. Sarah, Dr. Martinez said quietly, there's something else you need to know before this investigation concludes. My stomach clenched. What kind of something? Professor Williams discovered additional recordings on Emma's laptop, conversations she captured without your knowledge using voice-activated software. Dr. Martinez pulled up a new file on her computer. The IT department recovered over 40 hours of audio from your apartment, including private phone calls with your parents, conversations with Jake, even recordings of you talking to yourself while studying. The violation felt like ice water in my veins. She's been recording everything? 4 months. She documented your daily routines, analyzed your speech patterns for signs of stress, even recorded you crying after particularly difficult gaslighting sessions. Dr. Martinez's voice carried professional anger. Sarah, this goes far beyond academic misconduct. This is systematic stalking and psychological abuse. Through the window, I saw Emma suddenly stand up and start gesturing frantically at Dean Richardson, her voice raised enough that we could hear muffled shouting through the glass. She's claiming the recordings were necessary for accurate data collection, Dr. Martinez continued. According to her research notes, she was measuring the progressive degradation of subjects' baseline psychological stability through audio analysis. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Check your email now. You need to see what Emma submitted to Professor Williams. With trembling fingers, I opened the email Jake had forwarded. The subject line read, Research Update, Subject S, Week 12 Data Analysis. Emma's message to Professor Williams was clinical and detailed. Asterisk attached audio files demonstrate significant progress in memory disturbance induction. Subject now questions reality of current experiences. See November 2nd recording at 23:47 timestamp. Recommend accelerating intervention timeline. Subject approaching optimal psychological vulnerability for final testing phase. Asterisk. Final testing phase. There had been more planned. Dr. Martinez, I whispered, showing her the email. What was the final testing phase? Her expression darkened as she read. According to her research proposal, she intended to stage a complete psychological break, making you believe you'd had a full dissociative episode that required hospitalization. The room started spinning. She was going to try to get me committed? The proposal outlines a plan to convince you that you'd had a 12-hour memory blackout during which you'd called your parents making suicide threats, contacted professors with incoherent emails, and been found wandering campus in a confused state. Dr. Martinez's voice was steady but furious. All fabricated, of course, but with enough manufactured evidence to support involuntary psychiatric evaluation. I stared at Emma through the window, this person who'd smiled at me over morning coffee while planning my complete psychological destruction. She'd been building toward having me institutionalized for research data. The truly disturbing part, Dr. Martinez continued, is that her timeline suggests she planned to present this successful induction of complete psychological break as her thesis project for graduate school applications. My phone rang, Emma calling for the 6th time. This time, I answered. Sarah, thank God, Emma's voice was high and frantic. There's been a huge misunderstanding. I need you to tell them that you asked me to help document your memory problems. Just tell them about the episodes you've been having. I looked through the window at her desperate face, then at Dr. Martinez, who nodded encouragingly. Emma, I said clearly, I've never had memory problems. You made all of that up for your research project. The silence stretched for 10 seconds before Emma's voice came back, different now, cold and calculating. Sarah, you're obviously having another episode right now. You're confused and not thinking clearly. I'm going to recommend they hold you for evaluation. Even cornered and exposed, she was still trying to gaslight me. Actually, Emma, the only person being evaluated here is you. For academic fraud and psychological abuse. I hung up and watched her face transform through the window, the mask finally falling away completely, revealing someone I'd never really known at all. Through the window, I watched Emma's transformation from desperate to furious in real time. She stood abruptly, pointing at Dean Richardson while her mouth moved in what looked like angry accusations. Whatever she was saying made him take a step back and signal to campus security. Dr. Martinez, I said, my voice barely steady, she looks like she's about to completely lose it. That's exactly what someone looks like when their entire constructed reality collapses, Dr. Martinez replied grimly. Sarah, I need to prepare you for what's coming next. Emma's going to try one final manipulation attempt, and it's going to be the most aggressive one yet. My phone exploded with notifications, texts coming in rapid succession. You're making a huge mistake. I have recordings that prove you're unstable. Mom is going to be so disappointed when she finds out you lied about needing help. Asterisk Jake put you up to this, didn't he? He's always been jealous of our friendship, asterisk. You'll regret destroying my future over your paranoid delusions. The messages kept coming, each one more desperate than the last, until my phone was buzzing continuously. Dr. Martinez glanced at the screen and immediately called campus security. This is Dr. Martinez in counseling. I need additional officers at our location. We have a student engaging in harassment behavior that's escalating rapidly. Through the window, I could see Emma arguing with Dean Richardson while frantically typing on her phone. Her carefully maintained composure had completely shattered, revealing someone unhinged and dangerous. Dr. Martinez, look at this one, I said, showing her the latest message. Asterisk I kept detailed records of your actual psychological episodes. Wait until Professor Kim sees the recording of you crying about failing organic chemistry. Your academic career will be over. Asterisk. She's threatening to release private recordings of you without consent, Dr. Martinez noted, taking screenshots of the messages. That's criminal harassment on top of everything else. My phone rang, not Emma this time, but my mom. My stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. Sarah? Mom's voice was confused and worried. I just got the strangest call from Emma. She said you'd been lying about your mental health and trying to get her in trouble with the university. She sounded very upset. Even now, even while being investigated for academic fraud, Emma was trying to manipulate my own family against me. Mom, Emma is lying. She said you'd say that. She said the university counselor would explain that paranoid accusations are part of your condition. Mom's voice carried that careful tone again. Sweetheart, Emma played me a recording of you saying some very concerning things. You sounded so confused and frightened. I looked at Dr. Martinez, who held out her hand for the phone. Mrs. Mitchell? This is Dr. Martinez from the University Counseling Center. I'm calling to inform you that your daughter has been the victim of systematic psychological manipulation by her roommate as part of an unauthorized research study. I could hear my mom's sharp intake of breath through the phone. The recordings Emma played for you were obtained without Sarah's consent and taken out of context, Dr. Martinez continued. Your daughter is not experiencing any psychological issues. She's been deliberately gaslit for months by someone conducting illegal research. The relief in my mom's voice was immediate. Oh, thank God. I knew something felt wrong about Emma's call, but those recordings. were manipulated evidence designed to support a fabricated mental health crisis. Mrs. Mitchell, your daughter showed remarkable strength in exposing this abuse. After Dr. Martinez hung up, she turned to me with a serious expression. Sarah, Emma just committed witness tampering by contacting your family with false information during an active investigation. This has moved beyond academic misconduct into potential criminal territory. Through the window, I watched campus security officers approach Emma, who was still typing furiously on her phone. When they spoke to her, she gestured wildly toward Dr. Martinez's office, pointing directly at me. My phone buzzed with one final text, *, you have no idea what I'm capable of. This isn't over. *. I showed the message to Dr. Martinez, who immediately forwarded it to Dean Richardson. Within seconds, I saw him speaking urgently into his radio. That's a direct threat, Dr. Martinez said. Emma Chen's university career just officially ended. As campus security moved to escort Emma from the building, she suddenly broke away and ran toward the counseling center entrance. Through the office door, I could hear her shouting in the hallway. Sarah. I know you're in there. You can't hide from the truth forever. The sound of her voice, no longer carefully modulated but raw with fury, sent chills down my spine. This was who Emma really was underneath all the manipulation, someone who saw other people as objects to be used and discarded for her own advancement. Dr. Martinez locked her office door as Emma's shouting grew closer. Sarah Mitchell. You destroyed my entire future. Everything I worked for. The irony was perfect. Emma was finally experiencing the loss of control and reality distortion she'd been systematically inflicting on me for months. And unlike her carefully orchestrated psychological torture, this breakdown was entirely real. The shouting in the hallway stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of multiple security officers and what sounded like Emma being restrained. Dr. Martinez opened her door cautiously, revealing Dean Richardson approaching with a grim expression. Ms. Mitchell, I apologize for that disturbance. Ms. Chen has been removed from campus pending the completion of our investigation. He held up an official-looking document. Based on the evidence provided, the university is immediately suspending Emma Chen for academic misconduct, research fraud, and harassment. She's also been issued a no-contact order regarding you. What happens now? I asked, my voice still shaky from hearing Emma's unhinged threats. Now we ensure this never happens to another student, Dean Richardson replied. Professor Williams is implementing new safeguards for independent study projects, and the psychology department will be reviewing all research proposals from the past 2 years to identify any similar violations. Dr. Martinez handed me a thick folder. Sarah, these are copies of all the evidence we've compiled, Emma's fabricated timeline, the unauthorized recordings, her research proposal, and documentation of her previous misconduct. You'll need these for the formal hearing next week. I stared at the folder, months of psychological torture reduced to official paperwork. Will she actually be expelled? Given the severity of the violations and her previous probationary status, expulsion is virtually certain, Dean Richardson confirmed. The criminal harassment charges will be handled separately through the district attorney's office. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, saw security escorting Emma off campus. Please tell me you're okay. I stepped outside the counseling center 20 minutes later to find Jake waiting by his car, holding a coffee and wearing the biggest smile I'd seen in months. So, he said, handing me the coffee, how does it feel to single-handedly expose the most twisted psychology experiment in university history? I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time since this nightmare began. It feels like I can finally trust my own memory again. Your memory was never the problem, Sarah. Emma was just that good at manipulation. Jake opened his car door. Want to go somewhere where no one will try to convince you that conversations never happened? Yes, but first I need to do something. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Emma's contact information. For months, her name on my screen had filled me with dread and self-doubt. Now, I felt only satisfaction as I blocked her number permanently. There, I said. Now it's really over. As Jake drove toward campus, I rolled down the window and let the cold November air wash over my face. The world felt solid again, real in a way it hadn't for months. Street signs stayed where they belonged, conversations happened exactly as I remembered them, and most importantly, I was the sole author of my own thoughts and perceptions. My phone rang one final time as we pulled into the parking lot outside Morrison Library. My mom's name appeared on the screen. Sarah, honey, I owe you the biggest apology. I should have trusted you when you tried to tell me something was wrong. You couldn't have known, Mom. Emma was incredibly convincing. Dr. Martinez explained everything. That girl, what she did to you. Mom's voice carried a fierce protectiveness I hadn't heard since childhood. I'm just so proud of how you fought back. After hanging up, I stood in the parking lot where I'd spent countless hours questioning my own sanity, wondering if I was losing my mind or just losing myself. Now I knew the truth, I hadn't been losing anything. I'd been fighting to keep everything, my memories, my reality, my sense of self, against someone who wanted to steal them for academic credit. Emma had asked if I heard the doorbell at 3:15 a.m., expecting me to doubt myself and spiral into confusion. Instead, I'd heard something much more important, the sound of my own voice, finally loud enough to drown out her lies.